Hello, welcome to Excited Education Channel, the YouTube channel which brings you about mathematics and biology in courses, and teacher Amy Chris. We are going to discuss about biology on the point called Protozoa as the phylum of the animal kingdom. Let us go ahead. As you see here, this is one of the different samples that I tried to cover up, and in order to show you what are the protozoa and how they live, how they reproduce, how they fertilize, they be fertilized, and different features of the protozoa. So let us start. Protozoans are heterotrophic unicellular organisms usually lacking cellulose in cell wall. You have to know that the protozoans are the heterotrophic. They make their own food and they have one nuclei. Their cell have only one nuclei, which make it to be unicellular, and they, even though they have cell wall, but they lack cellulose in their cell wall. So if we say protozoa, just you have to think about also parasites. And we know that parasites, they are living on that benefit from another living organism while harming it. So the protozoans are also engaged or engaged in the parasites, where you find that they are organisms that depend on another living organism for beneficial use and harming it. So we know that in parasites we have different types of parasites, where you find that there is endoparasite and ectoparasite. For the endoparasite, those are parasites that depend on the living organism, but while they are inside of that cell. So, and for ectoparasite are those ones that depend on the living organism, but they are out of the cell. So in those parts, we will find that the parasites comprises different living organisms like protozoa, as we said, as our phylum state, and hemorrhages. So the hemorrhages, they are another phylum of the living of the animal kingdom, and they are simple worms. So, but for us, we are not talking about elements, but we are going to discuss about the protozoans. So let us go ahead in the protozoans. So protozoans are single cell, as I said. They have only one nucleus, which means they are unicellular, and they are eukaryotes, so they don't have cell wall. So even though they lack cellulose, they can't have cell wall, so they form double membrane or more cysts to become resident. So here the protozoa, as I said, they are parasites. We find different examples of the protozoa, but they are likely to have cysts which allow it to become resistant to the predators. So dear students, even though the protozoans are like a parasite, but also they have the medical important, or the medical role of important in general. So they have different medical important, like for instance, some protozoans, they act as infective stage, so where the invasion, they have to be invaded for the host, and where they are act as the diagnostic stage, and this is discover the infection. They use it to discover the infection and invasion to the host. There are several ways of the classification of the protozoans. So we are going to discuss about the classification of protozoans, but before we move on to the classification, we have to think about also its features or its characteristics. Those characteristics we are going to try to tackle on each of it, and before we go to the classification. So one of the character of the protozoa as a phylum of animal kingdom, like they are small, they are microscopic, and they are unicellular, as I said, some living in colonies of few individuals or of the many individuals. So dear students, here it simply means that even though those are protozoans and they are parasitic, they are also small. For that extent of being smaller, they requires microscope for their magnification, and they have unicellular, or they have one cell, and some of them, they live in colonies, as you see, and few individuals. So for the part of systematics, for the system is the symmetry is either null for the part of amoeba and bilateral for the paramecium, radio, and for the part of actinopoda, even spherical for the Protozoa. So and volvox. By looking on up the shapes of the protozoa, the shape of the cell is generally constant and oval, so elongated or spherical or deformed. As you see, for its shapes they are constantly or constant and oval, and even are elongated or can be spherical. So in some cases, however, the shape of the cell varies with age or with the characteristic of the environment. You have to know that the nucleus is quite distinct in the protozoa kingdom. Protozoa phylum. So, and if the nucleus is quite distinct, there is only one nuclei in the some group, two nuclei in the other group, or even multiple nuclei. And you have to know that we meet various organelles in this unicellular organism that are not found in metazoan cells. They are neither tissue nor organ. You have to take care of it. Their nucleus, maybe they can be 1, 2, or more according to the type of the living organism, which is called the protozoa. And you have to know that in the locomotion of the protozoa, another feature or characteristic of protozoa is on part of locomotion. Locomotion is either by cilia, yes, by flagella or pestopodia, or by the displacement of the whole cell. This is the locomotion of the protozoa. They can use cilia, small like hair, flagellates, those like tails, and pestopodia by engulfing of the food contents. So this is the part of locomotion. And another one is some species present a protection cell. So they have protection cell which is called test, and several species can transform into resistant cysts or spores in process called sporation. So for the several in advanced condition of the environment, or for the geographical dispersal by wind or water or animals. In the protozoa, they form what you call tests, and those tests it's generally transformed into resistant cysts. Those cysts, it is the a substance or the substance that is created by the protozoa in order to prevent it from the predators or the effectors. So this is one character. They try to make the cysts, even the sporation or the spores in a process called sporation, in their survival. So according to the condition of the environment, the form of feeding vary. Feeding is either holozoic, commensally, parasitic, saprophytic. Where saprophytic, they are feeding for dead plant materials, or saprozoic, where they feed on dead animal matters, or even horophytic, simply means autotrophic in some flagellates. It should be noted that some protozoans combine several types of feeding. Simply means they undergo different methods or different feeding methods due to its characteristic or its feature that it have for adapting the area. So the reproduction system is usually asexual on the protozoa and is done by binary or multiple fission. You have to know that in its production they reproduce by binary fission or multiple fission according to the type of or to the class of the protozoa, or by budding even. Sometimes the reproduction is asexual by fusion of gametes or by conjunction, especially in ciliates. For those ciliates, they like to use fusion of gametes or by conjunction. So this is the general biological characteristic of protozoa that we try to discuss about. Let us go to the general classification of the protozoa. Let us go ahead. There are several ways of classifying the protozoa due to site of infection and type of movement. So, many classification of protozoa is according to their type of movement. Thus, we divide them into 4 classes. Those 4 classes includes amoeba, flagellates, ciliates, Protozoa, and entamoeba. So, by explaining one by one, amoeba, they are parasite moving with pestopods or cytoplasmic projection. In this case, these protozoans, they likely to move by using cytoplasmic projection. They try to exchange their cytoplasm into different shapes in order to move. Why I find that pseudo means lying. They try to lie on the ground. Another point is flagellates. This is another class of protozoa according to their movement. They are parasite also with 2 or more flagellates. They have flagella and they have the ciliates, which are a parasite with cilia. This allows it to be parasitic on the cilia, and they like to use hair-like structure in their movement. They move like they are swimming. So another class is Protozoa. This includes plasmodium, which are non-motile and they are obligated intracellular parasite. For it, they live inside of the cell. They like to move or to be non-motile where they are out of the cell, but when they are inside of the cell, they like to move according to its adaptation. And another one is entamoeba. They like to be in contaminated water or contaminated food. The entamoeba has different species that affect human. However, we are concerned with the entamoeba histolytica. Due to its pathogenic characteristic, it's very important to be able to differentiate it from the other species such as entamoeba coli. Entamoeba, we likely to talk about, for instance, on the entamoeba histolytica. For it, it's found generally in contaminated water or contaminated food, and they are very different from that of entamoeba coli. The reason why they are different, the entamoeba histolytica is different from the entamoeba coli. This is because non-pathogenic, so it does not affect us negatively, because E. coli and E. histolytica, I said entamoeba coli and entamoeba histolytica, they likely to have differences. For instance, in entamoeba histolytica, they likely to have only 3 nucleus, and for that of entamoeba coli, they have more than 4. Here, it's more than 4 nuclei, then it's considered as a coli. And if it's so less than 4, then it's considered as a entamoeba histolytica. This is the difference between entamoeba histolytica and E. coli. For entamoeba histolytica, it mainly found that they have only 3 or less than 4 nuclei. While if we find that there are more than 4, they are called entamoeba coli. So, on part of flagellates, we have 3 major types according to the flagellates. First one is giardia, lamblia, and trichomonas vaginalis. The third is leishmania. For the giardia, lamblia, for its life cycle, starts with an infection via the fecal-oral route, which is likely before through the ingestion of the contaminated food or water, and then they release the trophozoic Trophozoite, which is binucleated to two nuclei in the small intestine, and then they multiplied by binary fission. After that, the Trophozoite move to the colony where the cyst formation occurs. So they have cyst, and the cyst released into fecal oral route. This fecal oral route ingested by food or inside of the food into, and then it goes into small intestine. Then when they reached into small intestine, they undergoes binary fission. And those binary fission, they occurs and goes to the colony to produce the cyst. So this is the Giardia lamblia. Therefore, Giardia lamblia has two life cycle stages, the Trophozoite and the cyst. For the part of Trichomonas vaginalis as the second group of the flagellates of the Protozoa, the Trichomonas vaginalis is transmitted via sexual contact and replicates its Trophozoite. Without forming any cyst, they usually reside in the female genital tract and the male urethra, even on prostate. Here, they undergoes binary fission, then male and female genital tract, they are likely to found there Trichomonas vaginalis. Then they developed into Trophozoite, then also stayed in the prostate and the male urethra or genital tract of the female. Another group according to the flagella is what we call leishmania. For leishmania, usually transmitted via sand flies and is resided in animal such as rodents or dogs. So the vector of transmission are the sand flies and the reservoir of the parasite are the rodents and dogs. The infected sand fly has the promastigote form of the leishmania, which is flagellated, and then it infects the host through the blood and it grows in the macrophage in the form of mastigote. So take care of this, which means it does not have a flagellum. This is the diagnostic stage of the leishmania. There are several diseases manifestation accompanying the infection with leishmania, such as cutaneous ulcers and Kala azara. For that, Kala azara is simply a severe form of that infection. These symptoms usually are enlargement of the liver and the spleen, so it's pretty life threatening. So this is the part of leishmania. And the Protozoa, they have different importance, even though they are harmful. The importance of Protozoa, which is plasmodium. Plasmodium are the main causative agent for malaria, which is really serious. So the cycle starts with the female mosquito, where the sexual production takes place between the male and the female gametes. After that, the mosquito bites and injects the sporozoites into the host. This sporozoites migrates to the liver, and this is referred to the exoerythrocytic cycle. And let us take a block summary on the protozoans. We find that we classify protozoa according to their locomotion is one criteria for the classification of the protozoa. It is done by cilia, flagella, pseudopod, or by the whole cell. Nutrition is done in various ways. We find that there is holozoic, saprophytic, saporozoic, horophytic, parasitic, and symbiotic. Reproduction is carried out following three distinct systems, either by binary or multiple fission, budding, and fission of gametes or conjunction. We have different classification of protozoa, mostly based on the two criteria, the mode of locomotion and the way of life. This leads to 5 classification. First class is flagellata. We have that flagellata locomotion is done by flagella. Show varied ways of life. So class Sarcodina use pestopodia for the locomotion. Another class is Protozoa, or parasites no locomotive organelle and digestive vacuole, flagellated garments and present. Another class is Ciliata, moving by means of vibratile cilia and are mainly free organism. Another class we find is, which is last, what we call class Cynodosporidia. This class Cynodosporidia, they are parasites, no locomotory organelles or garments without flagella. So let us allow you to make a clear understanding about protozoans. Thank you. Let us take a short quiz on this topic such that we will try to answer for it. Thank you for watching this video. May God bless you. I'm Teacher Amy on Excited Education channel. I would like to request each and everybody who is watching this video, just subscribe, comments and share for more suggestions in our way. Thank you.